Sup, nerds, I'm Wes.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Aaron.
We're Neverwhere Gaming, and we're taking a look at the brand new Pandemic Fall of Rome.
So this is the Spartan version of Pandemic, because you have these little Spartans that run around.
No.
Or they could be Trojan
Spartans
men.
are Greek.
He kind of looks like a Spartan.
No, he does not. He's a centurion. Aaron.
Okay, whoa. Nobody knows this. Don't get on your history high horse. I don't know the difference. And it doesn't matter. People will get really pissed about that, probably.
So you may be wondering what's different, what makes this pandemic different. Well, you're not fighting diseases, you're not fighting the old one, and you're not fighting a floodwater. You're fighting tons of invaders. You're fighting the Huns, different Vandals, the Anglo-Saxons, and the Franks, a couple other ones I've never heard of. And they are invading, trying to get to Rome, and it's representative of the fall of Rome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the biggest differences is the way that cubes are placed. Mm-hmm. Historically, in Pandemic, you draw the card, and you place cubes wherever that card says. In this game, because it's the different tribes advancing, it has a path traced on that card, and you trace back to the next eligible space that could take a cube, which is dependent on where other cubes are on the board. So, if you draw Rome, and it's white, but there's no white cubes surrounding Rome or in Rome, then they just pop up there. They have to move from somewhere else. You have to go back to where there is a white cube and then move forward there as close along that path as you can go. Mm-hmm. It's a little confusing at first, but once you read the rules and get it, it makes sense. And it's just one of those things that makes it a little more unique. And when you're planning where to defend, it's not just what has the most cubes, but because it's so dependent on Rome, you really want to start at Rome and work your way outward.
Which leads me to probably my first complaint, is I felt that was just a little bit clunky. He's right that once you play it, halfway through the game, you get it, and you can do it without really thinking about it. But it was a thing that made me kind of go, is this necessary? Do they need the ruling for this to be that kind of wonky? Because of the marching forward thing, this game is most reminiscent to me of Defenders of the Realm, which had these four big baddies who were moving from the edges of the board closer towards the center, and then when you drew cards to activate them, you just drew a location, and they moved one space closer to that location, type of thing. And I felt like something like this could have been implemented. Something like that could have been implemented here. Again, it's not that big of a deal, because I got it eventually, but I was always looking at it kind of going did it need to be in that exact way?
I do want to clarify, I really appreciated it, so we have differing opinions. I just want to make sure you don't know that that's not our whole stance on the game. That's just his negative.
And since you're not fighting diseases in this game, and you're fighting off these different barbarians, you can actually make an alliance with them, and that's how you kind of cure them in this game. Mm-hmm. Once you've made an alliance with them, you can actually turn them with another card into your own legion. So you can just replace them with the legions, which is how you actually fight in this game.
Which is important because you don't just remove cubes as an action, you roll dice. Another thing reminiscent of Defenders of the Realm. But the problem was it's not necessarily a succeed or fail as Defenders of the Realm was. Here it has cubes that you remove, so that's basically a success. Mm-hmm. Then there is a picture of the legion, so you could lose your legion. There's a side that has both of them, and then there's a side which is your special ability that everybody has. And some of them are good, or a lot of them are good, but there's one character in particular that's really powerful, so their special ability, if they roll it, is bad.
And that's one of the other things that makes this game a little bit harder, is the fact that you can't fight these guys off unless you have legions. The only way to get legions is either through special abilities and stuff, or by building a fort there first. You have to spend an action in the card to build a fort, and then spend an action to build legions, and then spend actions to fight off these cubes. And you can potentially take multiple cubes off in one action. If you had 3 legions, you can roll up to 3 dice, and then you could get 3 cubes, which would be great, but you could also lose just 3 legions. So there's definitely a lot more steps to take between I want to get rid of those cubes and then just removing those cubes.
You definitely have to think a couple steps ahead. You need to put your forts down in the most opportune places. You are limited to only having 6 on the board, so if you go to build your 7th one, you just remove one that you may not need anymore, it's not in the best spot, and throw it down, and then just spawn legions. But as the game goes on, and as we're drawing more and more of the invasion cards, mm-hmm. we're actually allowed to recruit less and less of the legions to help protect us. So it's as it gets harder, it gets harder.
Which is part of why you want to have made alliances with the other tribes, because then you can turn them into legions. So you definitely have to kind of stay with the flow of the game of, as you're getting to recruit less and less, you need to be able to convince the barbarians attacking you to join you at the same time.
And in this game, there are 5 diseases to get 5 barbarian types. And they have different numbers of cards that you need to. Some of them are 5, some are 4, and some of them are 3. Number of cards that you need to dump of their color in order to forge those alliances. So there is really a lot of difference here. And I feel like that decline track is longer too, because also the events you draw have a regular version and a super intense version, so that you could decline even more. Well, sorry, you could either do the action or you could decline down one in order to do the better version of the action.
Thematically, it's a corrupt version of the actions. Like, you can do this, or if you want to be corrupt, you can do this, but it's going to cause Rome's decline to happen faster.
And to win this game, you don't have to just cure all of the guys or get them all to join your side. You can actually get most of them to join you and then eliminate the others. So at the end, you just need to have, for each individual of the alliances, you need to either have an alliance or have them eliminated from the board to win. So you kind of have a little bit of like a choice there. You're like, but it also depends on how the cubes are coming out. It might be impossible for you to cure somebody from the board and actually remove all of their cubes.
And the elimination is difficult because once you eliminate them, they can just come right back again with cards. So it's not like, oh, well, all the blues are gone. And before, you could eradicate diseases. If you made the alliance or cured the disease and then eliminated them all, they were gone forever. And this, they're going to keep coming back. So there's no way to permanently remove them from the board. And in this game, one of the ways you can lose is if Rome ever gets sacked. So if you ever have essentially an outbreak in Rome, then the game's just over. It doesn't matter. It's the decline track. If this deck runs out, there's so many ways to lose. That's part of why you really need to defend Rome with everything you have, because outbreaks out here are bad, but one Rome.
So it almost kind of makes it a tower defense where you're like, we need to protect Rome at all costs. So you can throw down a fort, spawn legions in there, protect it, you're good to go. Unless you want to play on the really hard variant where you can't bring soldiers into Rome, which just makes it really hard because then you can't let anyone go in there, or you need to play with the guy that can use the port action and take cubes out of Rome, because if not, they're just going to keep piling in there and you won't be able to go in there and actually battle.
Which is kind of crazy to me because
we would have lost so soon.
Dude, I was already thinking that this is a harder, this is a harder version of a regular Pandemic. Now, I haven't played Iberia or Rising Tide, but this compared to Cthulhu and the Cure and regular Pandemic and even Legacy Season 1. I haven't played Season 2. This felt like there's a lot of harder stuff going on here. A lot more things that could go wrong. A lot more, balls in the air when you're juggling. You know how that
you
works.
get the dice, which adds
the dice, which add randomness to it. And then when you even brought that up, I was like, oh, that sounds hard. But then you brought it up before we played it, and then after we played it, I was like, that would be impossible. Are you kidding me? Because it's not just there's a city you can't get in. That is you were if you're here and you want to get over to here, you have to go 1, 2, 3. I'm like, that is
it's
so
kind of
huge.
All roads lead to Rome. So
is that a saying?
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely want to agree this is the toughest of the Pandemics that I've played. Iberia was kind of tough, but you could make those railroad tracks wherever you wanted, so you could use them.
As long as you laid good track, it could get easier because you could zip so far across the board so quickly. But beyond that, it was still harder because without the train tracks, mobility was so limited.
Yeah, so you had to build train tracks, but you could kind of build your routes where you wanted them.
And I think one of the things that really makes this game so hard is the dice, because it's so... anytime you add dice, there's going to be so much variability, because Pandemic was always had a lot of luck of how it was shuffled, what came up, but you could mitigate it a little bit because you could remember okay, I know these cities are here, so right now these are the cities we need to focus on because they're going to keep coming up. And even in this game, some cities are in this deck multiple times because there's multiple color cities. So that's one thing, those cities keep coming up. But because you could have the perfect strategy and roll the dice and then you lose all your legions instead of destroying all the cubes, that's just one more level to make this game so hard. Because vanilla Pandemic is still really tight. Like you can still, I lose that game fairly often just because we get overwhelmed. The cards are against us.
And he plays with no epidemic cards in the deck. Having not played Iberia or Rising Tide, it's hard for me to rank this with all the pandemics. I definitely do like it better than Vanilla Pandemic, of course, and probably better than Cthulhu. I liked Cthulhu. But I still think The Cure is probably my favorite of the different variations. I think by definition, Vanilla Pandemic, like it's like a classic, but I couldn't put that as my favorite because the other ones just have more. It's the same plus more, right? So it's hard for, like other than the Citizen Kane's the best movie just because it's the best movie. I couldn't have regular Pandemic be my favorite. And even like Legacy, I think I liked The Cure better, and I think I ultimately did like Defenders of the Realm better, and I was only thinking of that because this reminds me a lot of it, but that game is a lot bigger, it takes up more table space, and it's a lot longer. This still has the same game length, I felt, as a regular Pandemic game did.
And I think this is easier to Defenders of the Realm too, because we lost this, but we were so close to beating it. Like, we had that, I mean, we lost like 4 different ways in that last round, because we played it, and we're like, the last round, like, okay, we can't win because this deck was going to run out. And anytime this deck empties and you go to draw, you lose. But I was like, let's play as if it didn't, just because I want to see how it, like, if that hadn't happened, would we have won? And we didn't, because outbreaks happened and like just 10 different things happened and it was awful.
There's multiple outbreaks which caused the fall of Rome.
Yeah, but I do think that this is also a little bit easier than Defenders of the Realm, and even just easier to grasp because it's a smaller game.
Right.
I think they did an excellent job of finding a way to reskin Pandemic again, because people are going to compare it to a reskin, but changing it and making it fresh and making it something new. And it's still tight, it's still hard, and like if you were to not know that it was a Pandemic game, it would still be a tough game. It would still be a good game. It's just they use a lot of the same mechanisms, with how the countdown tracks work and stuff, and how the legions are coming out. So it's still at its core Pandemic, but it's not. It's
enough to be familiar, but not the same.
And I would even go as far as say I think it's the most different. Like we haven't played Rising Tide yet.
Other than The Cure.
Right there. Well, other than The Cure, that's
and Contagion.
I would even say those are both like in the universe, but not the same game. Like these
They're
are like
the same line.
Yeah, like these are the same line. The boy, like you look at it and you're like, okay, I see Pandemic. This one plays the most different, and because of that, I'm really, really happy with it. I do think I like Iberia one notch more than this. It's still my favorite of the Pandemics that I've played, besides like Legacy and the other ones of the actual Pandemic line. So this is probably my number 2, just because it's so different and it's fresh and it's new. But I definitely had a good time with it. I'm definitely like looking forward to playing it again.
Oh, I would definitely play it again, and I'll probably own it. As much as I'm not as in love with Pandemic as you are, I still like it enough to feel the need to have all of them, because I almost have all of them. If I have all but one, that's weird. And if you have all but one, you can correct that by going to the purchase link in the description box down below. Boom!
That was quite a segue.
That was pretty good, right?
Either way, subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.
Boom! So, in this picture here, it kind of looks like she's holding an iPad. But obviously, this picture is depicting the past. So she's probably holding, like, an Amazon Kindle Fire.